Christian Walker had an RBI single in the second and then a solo homer.
Walker gets it in the air. Deep left center. Christian Walker has homered again. He is back, and so are the Diamondbacks. And remarkably, they've taken a 12-11 lead.
Welcome to another Valley Sports Plug Arizona Diamondbacks recap for July 18th through July 30th, 2023. I'm Chris Patrick, and with me today, as always, my co-hosts Michael Benjamin and VSP Tallman, here to break it all down for you. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. In the last 2 weeks, the D-backs, still slumping, went 4-8 over 3 series. And after this last weekend, their overall record stood at 56-50 on the season, still hanging on to that third spot in the NL West. But let's take a look at how it all broke down for the D-backs. Starting off the last 2 weeks, we were in the middle of a road trip and taking on the NL best Atlanta Braves at Truist Park. The Snakes stole 2 of 3 in this series and won possibly the best MLB game of the year in that first game. After that, it was out to Cincinnati to take on the Reds for that final series of the road trip. The Snakes weren't able to keep their momentum going from the previous series and were swept out of town, losing all 3. Coming back home, the D-backs would host the St. Louis Cardinals and America's first baseman Paul Goldschmidt, a series many thought would be a good opportunity for us to get back on track. Unfortunately, they were only able to take 1 of the 3 games against St. Louis. The Diamondbacks stay at home to host the Seattle Mariners over the weekend. We saw our pitching staff continue to struggle in this one, and again, we're only able to take 1 of the 3 games here. But let's go ahead and pass it over to Michael Benjamin for a deeper look at the last 2 weeks.
We start our recap in ATL, running off fumes from the All-Star break and a dismal start to second half play. And we were begging for the bats to be recharged. They were resuscitated in Game 1, scoring 16 behind a barrage of homers and 5 RBIs from Christian Walker himself. Game 2 saw Kevin Ginkel securing his second save in back-to-back days. But Game 3 saw Miguel Castro give up a go-ahead 3-run shot to Austin Riley in the 8th. Tough finish to the series behind another bullpen collapse, but a series win is a series win, folks. And let's not sugarcoat it. That was really the only positives from this team for the rest of the recap as the D-backs finished the stretch 2-9. Another series sweep loss, this time at the hands of the Cincinnati Reds, who themselves are fighting for a wild card spot. Tommy Henry gives up a grand slam to a rookie in Game 1. Brandon Pfaadt's solid 6 innings are undone as he gives up back-to-back-to-back jacks in Game 2. And Elly De La Cruz hits his first career leadoff homer in Game 3. And next, like Chris said, an absolute disappointment of a series to the lowly St. Louis Cardinals. It's an understatement as Andrew Chafin blows a save in Game 1. A late game pinch hit heroic from Corbin Carroll do save the D-backs in Game 2, but the series is lost as the Cardinals score 8 runs after the 7th in Game 3. And in our final matchup, Tommy Henry gets toasted for 4 runs in the first and eventually injured in a Game 1 matchup against the Mariners. Newly traded Dominic Canzone secures his first game-winning RBI in Game 2, but the rust was there for Merrill Kelly in Game 3 as the Diamondbacks are shut out. And guys, there was only one question on many of our minds over the past month. Is this the year the D-backs really want to go for it and make a run for a playoff spot? Or are they looking to play it safe, look to the future, and deal with the outcome? And now that the trade deadline has come and gone, we definitely have some thoughts. And with that being said, I'll pass it over to Tallman so he can let us know what he's been seeing over the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, guys, as it was mentioned, 4-8 in the last couple of weeks. It's been another sad, disappointing recap for us here at Valley Sports Plug when we're talking about the Diamondbacks again. I'm almost convinced now that starting pitching is going to be the death of this team. Ultimately, when it's said and done, we're going to look back and say, wow, what were we thinking? This Tommy Henry injury is going to hurt us. Going to sit here, what was it, reports coming in that Slade Cecconi, I think I said his name right, is being reported as being the guy that's going to fill that rotation spot that's left empty by Henry. But we're still looking at a Brandon Pfaadt who, yeah, he looked good through those 6 innings, but man, you can't give up back-to-back-to-back home runs. But on that case, who do you blame? Do you blame the pitcher, or do you blame the manager for leaving him in there after he got toasted for 2 back-to-back? With Brendan Pfaadt and Ciccone going in there in that rotation, I don't know. So I'm going to be counting the days till we can get Henry back. The other thought is, do you give Davies a chance if he's healthy again, depending on how Pfaadt does it? But again, starting pitching is going to kill us. But what has been saving us has been the bats. The bats have been flat. So we need the bats to come to life again to save this team. We need to get back to that nickname this team was given, the answer backs, where our pitching will give up a bunch of runs, but what do you know? We can string together 3, 4, 5 runs in an inning, and we're right back in the game. But we're still in a race for a wild card spot. I think that we got a good chance of still making a playoff run, but looking at how the Braves are doing it, like you said, Mike, this year's probably not the year that the Diamondbacks are looking at running deep into the playoffs. I mean, how do you beat the Atlanta Braves unless you go in an all-out shootout like we did in that 16-13 win? But I'm sitting here, it feels like I can't remember the last time we won a series. Seems like we keep getting ran off the ball field every single game. So, but I'll pass it back to you guys.
When it comes to the topic of if we're trying to win this season or we're setting ourselves up for the future, I think the trade deadline said a lot, and we will get into that. Mike Hazen did say that there's a difference between being aggressive and being reckless. And I think the moves that they made show that they were playing it safe a little bit and maybe thinking more about the future than the now. But I want to look at the last 2 weeks because Tallman is absolutely right. We really need the bats to carry this pitching staff. It continues to be an issue, the pitching, and I don't think that it's going to get too much better. We did make a few additions, a few subtractions with our pitching rotation, but didn't get any new starting pitching help. So the guy Slade Sassoni, however you pronounce it, and Brandon Pfaadt are probably going to get some minutes, especially with Tommy Henry still out. And then our guys that were supposed to be our aces in Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly have kind of taken a step back here recently. In the last 2 weeks, Gallen had 2 starts, was 0 for 1 in those starts with an ERA of 5.40 and 13 strikeouts. A long way away from where he was at the beginning of this season, looking like a surefire candidate for the Cy Young in the NL. Merrill Kelly himself in 2 starts, also 0 of 1, an ERA of 3.27 and 11 strikeouts. So not quite as bad, but you got to give up fewer runs as a starter. And in a lot of these games, those runs are coming early in the first or second inning. And that's a major problem when you're already having to battle back from being down. Just to highlight a few stats of the batters here, I do have some reason to be optimistic because it seems like the bats are kind of trying to start getting to where they were previously. Christian Walker in the last 2 weeks batting .292 as an average with 14 hits, 4 home runs, and 10 RBIs. You might remember in the previous 2 weeks in our last recap, he had been batting just .129 as an average. So that's quite the improvement if I do say so myself. Corbin Carroll, of course, remains a stud, batting .261 average, 12 hits, 3 home runs, and 10 RBIs. And our boy Ketel Marte in the last 2 weeks, .370 average, 20 hits, 2 home runs, and 9 RBIs. It's going to be a team effort. These bats have to know that the weight is on their shoulders to carry us to the finish line. And whether that's a NL West division championship or a wild card spot is going to come down to these last few months and how we can really manage these games. And I think a lot of eyes are on Torey Lovullo when it comes to that regard. But guys, we did mention the trade deadline that just passed here August 1st at 6 p.m. Eastern time. We made some moves at the buzzer, a few on Monday the 30th, and then, of course, August 1st there. So starting off, I just want to highlight we did trade for relief pitcher and looks like he's set up to be the closer, Paul Sewald from the Seattle Mariners. To acquire his services, we gave up Dominic Canzone, Josh Rojas, and prospect Ryan Bliss, who is a 5'6" shortstop, was in our farm system and played in the Futures game in the All-Star break. Later that day, we acquired Jace Peterson from the Oakland Athletics for cash considerations, presumably to take over that utility spot that Josh Rojas left. And then moving over to Tuesday afternoon, we got Peter Strzelecki, I think I'm pronouncing that right, from the Milwaukee Brewers, straight up for Andrew Chafin, shipping him out of town. And the last move made was acquiring outfielder Tommy Pham from the New York Mets for prospect Jeremy Rodriguez, another shortstop in our system. So out of those moves, guys, I'll pass it over to you first, Mike. Who would be your player of the trade deadline?
I think this was an easy decision for me specifically because of all the distress that we've been having in the bullpen. And it's just well known that closer by committee does not work. So I had to go with Paul Sewald coming over from the Seattle Mariners. He is a journeyman reliever who's 33 years old, but this year has had some nice numbers. In 43 innings pitched, he has 60 strikeouts, 21 saves with a 2.93 ERA and a 1.02 whip. So I'm just excited to have somebody solidified for that spot instead of trying to put in Miguel Castro or Andrew Chafin or most recently Kevin Ginkel, who has been serviceable to say the least. But now you can start figuring out those late game reliever situations, not just trying to throw guys in where they might go, because guys, it just hasn't been working. So thank goodness we got a closer that we can actually call a closer now. So Paul Sewald, had to go with him.
I like that choice, Michael Benjamin, but I'm curious, VSP Tallman, who is your player of the trade deadline?
Yeah, I like Mike's pick too as well. I know we all probably would have liked to have seen a starting pitcher added to this team, but at the end of the day, I think the bullpen was our biggest issue. So Mike's pick's great because it really, really solves a glaring issue on this team by having that solidified closer. But my player of the trade deadline will be a guy that was shipped out of town in that trade that saw us see Paul Sewald come to Arizona. I'm going to go with Josh Rojas. I'm going to feel a little bad for the kid because the last couple seasons he's been a popular player on this Arizona Diamondbacks team. A lot of the fans loved him, but seeing him get shipped out of town after having a 228 batting average in 59 games, 0 home runs, you could tell that he wasn't a fit on this roster, and it proves to you that this team needs success from you, or they're going to show you the door. But Josh Rojas being sent out. We got Emmanuel Rivera, who's going to fill that third base spot. He's been live at the plate. Of course, with that addition of Jace Peterson, gives us an extra body at third base as well. So Josh Rojas getting shipped out is going to be my pick.
I think that's pretty solid. Kind of along those same lines, I'm going with it's almost addition by subtraction when my player of the trade deadline is Andrew Chafin, a guy who I was really excited to have back here in the Valley after he had spent some time with the Cubs and the Tigers. But since then, it seems like he's worn out his homecoming or his welcome, if you will, with an ERA of 4.19 on the season. Just not quite what we were looking for. And the return we got for him in Peter Strzaleski is pretty comparable numbers wise. His record is 3-5 on the year with an ERA of 4.54 with 37 strikeouts, but he's quite a bit younger, 5 years younger than Chafin, and comes with more control for the future. Whereas Chafin, I think, only had 1 year left on his contract that we're sending out to Milwaukee. So like we've kind of talked about, kind of looking to stay competitive now while also looking forward to the future. And I don't know, maybe this time next year we'll be more aggressive at the trade deadline, depending on what our team looks like then. I'm just overall disappointed that we didn't make any moves to secure the starting pitching rotation. And I guess we'll just have to see how that shakes out. And we will get an opportunity to see how that shakes out in these upcoming series. First, we will take on the San Francisco Giants for 4 games away in San Francisco. We'll stay on the road and head out to Minnesota to take on the Twins for a 3-game series. We'll come back home for a bit to take on the Los Angeles Dodgers for a quick 2-game series before staying in California and traveling to San Diego to take on the Padres for a 3-game series. You'll notice 3 of those 4 teams are in our division, so a big chance for us to move and climb up those standings a little bit should we play up to our potential. But believe that we will keep an eye on that and keep bringing you recaps every 2 weeks, as well as content every single week over on our YouTube channel, Valley Sports Plug. For Michael Benjamin and VSP Tallman, I'm Chris Patrick, and we'll see you next time. Peace.